You know, we are experiencing extreme cold temperatures outside. So we're going to go over this lineup for the first hour that we have together. Just keep in mind, we're going to talk a lot about the conditions that we're experiencing here and for that matter, what's happening throughout the country when it comes to the weather. But I'll start you off right here with the man that so many of you love to watch. Some of you only pop in to watch from time to time. The one and only Harvard astronomer Avi Loeb is going to be joining me. That's in about 30 minutes, so get your timers ready for that. Only a few hours have actually passed since the interstellar object 3I Atlas that we have talked so much about arrived at its rare full moon phase. So we're going to be talking about his observations and what happens next. We're going to be taking your questions. So go ahead, go to the chat, get in your questions there. We are able to see them, so we'll be able to pose those to Professor Loeb when he joins me around 1:30. Also, a new nationwide report warns that decades of progress in reducing tobacco use now we're looking at some trends that are happening that are very concerning here. They're saying states need to act now. The report found that states are actually falling far short of funding of tobacco prevention and cessation programs. And one of the most alarming trends, in fact, that we're seeing already is that Gen Z smoking is on the upswing. How did that happen? The executive vice president of the Campaign for Tobacco-Free Kids will be here very soon. I'll be talking with him. But first, we start again, like I said, with the bitterly cold temperatures outside. It really does not take long for things to go very wrong. In fact, this morning we found out that an elderly woman in Evergreen Park died in her home from cold exposure. I mean, you never want to hear things like this. She was actually the 8th cold weather death in Cook County during the winter season. And just within the next few hours after we heard about that, we got word from the Cook County Medical Examiner's Office that we're actually now at 10 cold weather related deaths this winter season so far. And we just got to these, incredibly cold temperatures outside. So I'm grateful to have Dr. Sam Rabor. He is the chair of emergency medicine at St. Anthony Hospital on the southwest side to talk more about what they're seeing and to share more information that could honestly help save lives. Thank you so much for your time, Dr. Rabor.
Thank you for having me. Yeah, well, as we're all facing this polar plunge throughout the city, the biggest thing that I'd like to recommend to our people of the city of Chicago is just prevention. If at all possible, please avoid going outside in this frigid temperature, but also when you are at home to make sure that you are in an environment that can produce heat, like the unfortunate story that you just mentioned in Evergreen Park. But the biggest thing is to stay away from the cold if at all possible.
Yeah, I mean, it's so sad when you hear those things. Let's talk about maybe some of the signs of hypothermia first and foremost, because it doesn't, like I said, it doesn't take long. Give us actually maybe a time frame.
Yeah, so our body naturally creates heat. So if we are outside, the biggest thing is to wear multiple layers, if at all possible, as well as some moisture wicking body liners and head protection, ear protection, and hand protection. So some of the first signs that we see are kind of the pain and numbness and color change to our ears, nose, fingers, and toes. A lot of times that ends up being the first indicator that you've been out in the cold for too long. For prolonged exposure, sometimes even confusion and altered mental status can happen. So that is why limiting your time outside is the number one factor, because if you are already starting being confused from prolonged cold exposure, you might not know to go back inside or to remove yourself from the cold.
Yeah, that's a good point to make. And we hear the terms hypothermia, frostbite. What are the differences between the two?
So hypothermia just means low temperature. Our normal operating temperature for our body is that 98.6 that we all hear. Once we get below 95 to that 95 to 90 range, that's when we're dealing with mild hypothermia. Sometimes you'll still have the ability to shiver, At that point, that's a natural body mechanism to produce heat. Once we get a little bit lower than that, we actually lose that ability to shiver and start exhibiting more confusion, as I mentioned earlier. And that's like the 90 degrees to 82 degrees. If you yourself are in those range, obviously immediately go inside, but I would also recommend seeking medical attention as you might need assistance in getting your body back up to normal temperatures.
How long would that take? And when you talk about assistance, what are some of the measures that would be in place?
So the biggest thing is actually rewarming, whether it's a warm bath, usually at the 98 degrees to 100 degrees. And if it is a truly severe hypothermia, we actually do submerge people in warm liquids to get the whole body back up to temperature. We use warm IV fluids as well. The biggest thing also removing clothing that could be damp, continuing that cold exposure for that patient.
What, we see people who are still, and maybe they have to, but still kind of out and about. I mean, I'm looking out a window right next to me right here. You can still see a few people who are out and about. Maybe they're only going to be out for a couple of minutes, and maybe that's why. But what's the risk of, especially older people, our senior citizens, maybe falling, and I mean, unfortunately, if they should fall, someone maybe not getting to them in time. I mean, and even with the woman that I mentioned in Evergreen Park, being in a house and you're there, maybe people aren't checking on you regularly, and then you expire by yourself inside.
Yeah, I mean, this is where just having that insight to check in on those high-risk populations, as you mentioned, are elderly. You might think that they are safe at home and indoors, but unfortunately, as this scenario just exhibited, they not necessarily are. So even just that simple call, if you yourself are the elderly and are in that situation, and sometimes might not be willing to ask for help from family or friends, there is 311 that you can call. There are senior shelters that can help and assist with any issue that you might have during this time and weather. So I would definitely recommend that. In terms of being outdoors, obviously I would minimize that, but if you are going outdoors, let people know that you're going outdoors, how long you plan on, and knowing an exit route, whether you are close to another building or another facility or another family member, just so they can be aware of your situation and where you are at.
Yeah. When do you know you need to go to the emergency room? Or if someone should find someone, how do you know this person needs to get to the emergency room fast?
If you find someone that has been prolonged in the weather and you're worried about hypothermia, definitely if there's any signs of confusion, I would immediately take to the emergency room that has already shown to indicate that they are in moderate hypothermia, at least. And then also if you have persistent color change to your extremities, like your fingers, and persistent numbness and severe pain, going back in, removing yourself from the cold, I would recommend rewarming them immediately in some warm 96, 98 to 100 degrees water. If you still are having pain, blistering that is not improving, I would also still seek out medical attention at that point in time.
Yeah. How do you all in an emergency room prepare for people to start coming in with those types of things during these types of conditions that we have outside?
Just awareness that we've been sharing kind of with our staff. So I'd imagine throughout this whole weekend, we're going to be seeing a lot of these concerns and issues. Some might be minor, some might not be as severe as the examples we have mentioned, but seeking out the care sometimes is that peace of mind. But everyone, including our security guard, our registration, are aware of educating staff of shelter resources. We have a warming blanket that we can give to patients as they come in to escape the cold. And then obviously triaging all of our patients and seeing everyone that comes through that door and making sure that they leave in a better condition that they came in.
Dr. Rabor, what are some myths or misconceptions that you think put people at a higher risk this time of year?
Well, the toughness of being Chicago people and in the Midwest, thinking that we can brave this weather because we see seasons all the time and we expose the cold. Sometimes that can be a hindrance to ourselves. So I would definitely try not to brave it if at all possible. There's also been some myths about rubbing your hands in terms of when they are frosted, and that could actually cause more damage
Hmm.
to the tissue that's already injured. So actually, just as I mentioned, getting yourself out of the cold and then submerging your hands into warm water is a better method in terms of rewarming or thawing your digits versus rubbing your fingers, because that could actually further damage to the already damaged tissue.
Really interesting stuff there. And when we talk about being properly dressed, is there, is there a standard of what would be underdressed for this type of nosedive in terms of the temperatures?
The whole idea is to have multiple layers, and you can be very methodical in terms of the layers that you put on. The closest layer to your skin and your body would ideally be moisture wicking to avoid moisture accumulating on your body, as liquids have been shown to remove the heat from a body a lot quicker than air at times. And then the next layer over that would be some sort of insulating loose garment, whether that be cotton, but wool actually would be ideal in that situation. And then your most exterior layer should be a weather resistant, potentially even waterproof jacket of sorts, including pants. Multiple sock layers is also helpful. Closed shoes obviously would be ideal. And then, as I mentioned, fingers, nose, and toes being very susceptible. So ear protection, head protection, as well as if you can, face protection, whether that's a scarf or an actual mask. But those have been shown to protect the very susceptible areas that we normally have issues with in extreme cold.
And given what you do, are there some things that you wish more people knew that you actually do different in these days?
Just the biggest thing is just avoiding the cold exposure and checking in on the very susceptible, whether that is the very young, children, as well as our very, very old. A lot of times we just think about ourselves. Just check on that neighbor, check on that family member that you don't normally talk to. And I think that can avoid some serious outcomes. Just having some sort of citizenship to your community and your family, I think, can go a long way.
Yeah, that's so important that we all just kind of look out for each other during these times. Thank you so much for just joining me and helping us to all think more, one, about each other during these extreme cold temperatures, but also about some of the things that maybe, we feel like we're built for tough, but being a little bit more human in the way we look at it. Thank you so much.
Yeah, of course. My
All right.
pleasure.
Take care. Have a good weekend. Stay warm. We so appreciate all the work that our first responders do, both those at the hospital and those who are out and about, to make sure that we're okay. And yes, we want to make sure that that 10 deaths that we've already seen doesn't continue to rise from this cold weather outside. Listen, while he was speaking, we actually got a live picture we're going to go to now here. We know we're deep in the cold right now, but March will be here before you know it. And this is actually the St. Patrick's Day court ceremony happening at City Hall. Do we have some audio here?
City Council chamber.
Not like that. On behalf of the Plumbers Local 130 and the Parade Committee, we'd love to formally invite you to the 71st Annual Chicago St. Patrick's Day Parade on March 14th.
I am honored and I graciously accept your invitation. Thank you. Get a group pick here, and do we want us, Olivia, do you want us, or Ross, do you want us all on the same level, or do you want us?
March 14th will be the big day. We always love to see it here in the city, and there are some very proud court members there surrounding one of our aldermen who are getting ready for what will be, I'm sure, another wonderful parade. It is always so much fun to go out and see everyone, hundreds of thousands of people throughout the city for the St. Patrick's Day parade. And again, that will be March 14th when we will see these young ladies and also so many others, whether it's union workers or the bands that will be there and so many others throughout the city as they will be careening through for the parade. That's the parade that's downtown. Of course, there's the parade on the south side as well that will be happening, and it's just always a wonderful time for everyone who comes out. And hopefully, by then the temperatures will be a little bit better than what they are today. But just a good time to celebrate community and culture and all of the things. So think spring thoughts, everyone, even though we are deep in the grasp of winter today. It is 1:15. We're going to take a quick break. Give us 2 minutes, and we'll be right back.
Good.
Thank you, Billy.
Thank you
Are
for
you
having us.
corned beef cabbage next Thursday?
Yeah, hell yeah. I think I got a table.
Oh, did you?
I hope so. I don't know why you hope you don't keep track of that stuff, but I will double check on that. Yeah, but it reminded me that I haven't.
It's 1:18 right now, and I think just as we were going to break there, the bagpipes started playing at the ceremony that we were looking at City Hall. Are they still playing? All right, they finished. What timing we have. Sorry about that. We were going to try to listen to them if we could. If you saw, we were staying on that picture as long as we could, but we will get much more of them come March for sure. I love just even sitting in restaurants when they start popping in some of the restaurants and playing the bagpipes. It's always just a fun time. Again, March 14th, you saw the court, you saw the bagpipes. You'll get to hear them come March. And let's go ahead and move on to our next conversation for now. It was troubling to hear that any generation is starting to see an increase in smoking use, and quite surprising to see that the generation is Gen Z, young people who are starting to pick up those habits now. And state legislature in this session, they're being asked to take up and look at a new nationwide report that is really pushing for them to make some progress in reducing tobacco use for at-risk groups like Gen Z. There are groups that say unless states act, we're going to continue to see these numbers rise. And of course, as those numbers rise, we see numbers rise for things like lung cancer and things of that nature as well. So Brian King, the Executive Vice President of Campaign for Tobacco-Free Kids, is joining me now. Certainly appreciate your time and sharing a bit of the research that you all have done in this area.
Yes, good afternoon. Happy to be here.
I'm happy to have you. Sad that this is what we're talking about, really. Where was the turning point that we start to see Gen Z now picking up smoking?
Well, we've made considerable progress in reducing cigarette smoking in this country. We're at 75-year lows for adults, and we're at 25-year lows for overall tobacco product use. But where we've seen pivots in recent years is with emerging tobacco products, particularly e-cigarettes and also more recently nicotine pouches. We're also seeing continued glamorization of cigarettes and other conventional tobacco products. And so taken all together, we don't want to reverse all this monumental progress that we've made over many years, and the time is really now to redouble our efforts to invest in tobacco prevention and control strategies and make sure that we protect public health.
Yeah, because I certainly remember being a kid looking at magazines and there were advertisements for cigarettes. These days, most youth wouldn't be looking at magazines like what we looked at when I was younger. But when you say advertisement, where are they seeing this advertisement now?
Well, the advertising has evolved over time. And, many decades ago, we were seeing advertising on television, and then population-based policies and laws prevented that. And then the tobacco industry shifted to other areas like billboards and sporting venue endorsements. And then that was prohibited in the late 90s. And now you're seeing a shift as media has evolved to social media and the internet. And in many cases, these are being advertised by influencers and people who are indirectly linked to the tobacco industry. And it's a lot of the same themes and tactics that we've seen for many years to promote tobacco products like cigarettes, independence, rebellion, all of these themes that we know resonate with kids. And now it's just a different chapter of the same book with continued promotion of new and emerging tobacco products.
Okay, and the new report that's out, the timing of it is significant.
Yeah, so we are at an unprecedented time in the history of public health and tobacco control in this country. We've seen decimation of public health infrastructure at the federal level, and that includes the elimination of CDC's Office on Smoking and Health, which has traditionally been the key funder for state tobacco prevention and control programs. And so without that federal support, now more than ever, it's really critical that states step up to fund these programs. And the bad news from the report that we just released was that states are only spending about 20% of what CDC recommends is optimal. And it's even worse in the state of Illinois. They actually rank 32nd out of 50 states, spending only 11% of what CDC recommends. And so it's really critical now than more than ever if we want to continue these gains in protecting kids from these products and prevent emerging products from increasing, to really invest robustly in these tobacco prevention and control programs.
That's pretty surprising that Illinois would be 32nd when you would just think that states that have maybe a higher connection to tobacco would be a little bit further up.
Well, we know that comprehensive approaches work to prevent kids from starting and to help people who are currently using these products to quit. And so there's a lot of strategies that can be used, but we know the single most effective intervention is increasing price. The higher the price, the lower the prevalence of use. And the states with the highest tax in particularly on cigarettes, have the lowest prevalence of use. And so this latest report found that if Illinois were to increase their cigarette tax by just $1.50 more, it would prevent nearly 8,000 kids from starting to smoke. It would help 30,000 adult smokers quit, and it would also raise money, around $135 million in prevented health care costs in just the first year alone. So there's a lot of opportunity in terms of both revenue gain, but also preventing those health effects and the costs associated with smoking.
Sure, and of course, anytime there's a conversation about increased taxes, things get a little hairy, even if it is for a purpose that could save lives.
Yeah, and I think it's important to note the context. And so we know that cigarette smoking kills nearly 500,000 Americans every year. It's still the leading cause of preventable disease and death, but it also costs this country $600 billion a year in healthcare costs and also lost productivity costs. And a sizable proportion of those are paid by government programs, including Medicaid, that taxpayers are contributing to. So ultimately, and you save money by increasing the taxes on those who are using these products, which again is going to help prevent kids from starting and help people who are currently using these products to quit, with the end goal of protecting public health. So in the end, it's a win-win and a net benefit for public health.
When we say Gen Z, is there a specific age that we're seeing more youth turn to these products, or a specific time frame in their lives?
Well, we know that the vast majority of adult tobacco users begin before age 18, about 90%, and 95% begin before the age of 25. And so youth and young adulthood is a really critical window for cutting off that spigot and potentially preventing them from a lifetime of nicotine addiction. That said, we're continuing to make gains in reducing youth tobacco product use, but again, we're seeing these new products start to uptick. And so it's reversing our progress, and it's really critical that we do everything that we can. And it's not just youth, it's also young adults. And right now we're seeing upticks in nicotine pouch use, in particular among young adults, so that 18 to 24, 25 demographic. And this is a problem not only because of the risks of tobacco product use, but because they also have nicotine. And nicotine is highly addictive. It can harm the developing adolescent brain, which continues to develop till age 25, and it can also prime the brain for addiction to other drugs.
Let's delve into the health risks a little bit more. You just talked about one of them. Tell us about some others that we're seeing more of.
So when it comes to cigarette smoking, it harms nearly every organ of the body. As I noted earlier, nearly 500,000 Americans continue to die from cigarette smoking per year. A lot of people think it's a solved issue. That is not true. We have 30 million American adults who still smoke, and we have over 2 million kids who are using some form of tobacco products. So there's still more work to do. And it's not just the deaths, it's also people living with smoking-related disease. For every one person who dies, another 30 are living with smoking-related disease. And it's not just cancers, which is what people a lot of times think when it comes to smoking. There's 12 different types of cancers that are caused by smoking, in addition to lung, but also coronary heart disease, type 2 diabetes, as well as various other adverse health effects that people may not think of. And of course, that's also on top of the risks of nicotine, which, as I noted, is highly addictive, but also can adversely affect the developing brain, which actually continues to develop till young adulthood.
Yeah, so all of these things seem like a sure bet to continue to fund the programs, that the reasoning is pretty obvious and pretty clear cut. Well, what kind of pushback do you get?
Well, a lot of times people are averse to investing resources, and that typically includes money. That can involve taxation as well, but I think it's important to look at the bigger context of public health. And we're dealing with the leading cause of preventable disease and death in this country, and also in the state of Illinois. And so that's going to require sizable resources, because we're dealing with a sizable health risk. And we have to look to the science in terms of what is most effective to prevent initiation and promote cessation. And when it comes to evidence-based, we have over 50 years of science showing us what works to help people stop using these products, and that's increasing price, that's creating smoke-free environments so people aren't seeing it in everyday places, particularly indoors. It's educating the public, including through mass reach health communication campaigns, and it's allowing barrier-free access to FDA-proven cessation medications. And when you take all those strategies comprehensively, the science shows that it prevents kids from starting and it helps adults quit.
When we say stopping, obviously back in the day, you would think of like a 12-step or something like that. I mean, and you would have the conversation about like not going cold turkey, or can you go cold turkey, all of these types of things. When it comes to some of these new age products, is that a part of the conversation, or what does stopping a pack, a nicotine pack, what does that look like?
Well, there's no risk-free tobacco product. And so it's important that if you're not already using a tobacco product, you should not start, and youth should not be using any form of tobacco product, whether you're talking about a cigarette, a nicotine pouch, or an e-cigarette. And when it comes to quitting tobacco products, the best first line of defense is FDA-approved medications. And FDA has approved 7 medications that have been shown to be safe and effective. That includes 5 nicotine replacement therapies like the patch, the lozenge, the gum, and also 2 medications. And so taking those medications and also in coordination with behavioral counseling from a physician or other healthcare provider has been shown to increase the likelihood of quitting smoking successfully. That said, we know we're dealing with nicotine, which is a highly addictive drug, so it takes people a lot of times to quit. And so it's important that they continue to try, even if they failed with each quit attempt, they gain knowledge and insight that can help them lead to success in the long run and a tobacco-free future.
Yeah, that's the important thing. If at first you don't succeed, to keep trying. So thank you so much for being here. I guess the same goes for you all in your efforts to try to make us a healthier society, to keep trying. Thank you so much for your efforts.
Thank you. Appreciate the time today.
All right, take care. It's 1:30, everyone. What did we promise you right around 1:30? The one and only Harvard professor, Avi Loeb. Give us 2 minutes. We're going to bring him in. Just about 1:34 right now, everyone, and it's the moment so many people have waited for. The one and only Harvard professor Avi Loeb joining me now. Whenever he puts out, a new publication, whenever he writes a new paper, we're thinking, yeah, it's great for everyone, and we encourage everyone to go online and read it. But it's even better to have the man himself explaining it to us, for mere mortals in our brains, what we can comprehend. Thank you so much for your time yet again. Welcome back to Chicago Live.
It's a great pleasure to join you.
All right. So this new paper is about 3i Atlas being at a rare full moon phase. Was that just a few hours ago?
Well, it happened yesterday, and very gladly, the Hubble Space Telescope was looking at it because some places on Earth were cloudy, and I know from observers that couldn't really take good data of it. But just a few hours ago, I received an analysis of the first data from the Hubble Space Telescope on January 22nd, and it looks very interesting. What we see is, once again, this anti-tail, a plume of gas and dust pointed towards the sun. The special thing about January 22nd is that we are looking at the object, 3i Atlas, from the direction of the sun. That's an amazing alignment to within 0.69 degrees that I pointed out in a paper that was published yesterday, just on the day of this alignment. We don't get that privilege very often, even with objects within our solar system. But here we are talking about an interstellar visitor that is very puzzling, and it happens to be yesterday on January 22nd, 2026, opposite to the direction of the sun relative to us. And that means that it's very similar to a situation with a full moon, where the object is being illuminated by the sun, and there is no shadow, no part of the object which is shadowed by the other part. And so we can actually see the reflection of sunlight from the object as well as from dust around it in its full glory, and learn from the brightness rise. There should have been a surge in brightness of 3i Atlas yesterday. From that rise, the level that it gets to, and the rate by which it rises, we can learn about the composition and the size of the dust grains around it, and also something about the object itself, because the anti-tail, this jet that we often saw from the side, pointed towards the sun, is pointing at us. Actually, the rotation axis, the object is rotating every 7.1 hours. This is based on another paper that I submitted for publication a few days ago. We measured the rotation period from the periodic variations in the brightness of the object, but also from the fact that the jet system around it is wobbling. You know, just like the beam of light from a lighthouse that is wobbling around the rotation or axis of the lighthouse. So we see those jets wobbling in the sky because of the rotation of the object every 7.1 hours or so. And now, actually, the rotation axis is very close to the direction of us, the direction of Earth and the sun, and also the anti-tail, this jet that is pointed towards the sun that we saw wobbling, is now almost pointed at us. But the good news is that we shouldn't worry too much about it pointed at us, because I did a calculation that shows that none of the toxic materials which are being shed by 3i Atlas, for example, we know that there is that there are some materials that are not really good for our health, and it will have no chance of reaching the Earth because the object itself is moving very fast at 60 kilometers per second, and that material is moving with it. It's also being pushed by the solar wind and the solar radiation away from us. And the orbit of 3i Atlas never really went through the circle that the Earth makes around the sun. So there is no risk that these materials will reach us. But it gives us an opportunity to look at it face on. And I looked at the image that was obtained on January 22nd. And what I see is, in addition to the anti-tail, once again, there is a system of 3 mini jets. These are small jets coming out of the nucleus of the object after you remove the spherically symmetric glow around it. So there is a way of filtering out the smooth glow, the spherically symmetric glow around it, and then you are left with 3 jets after applying this filter, which is called Larson-Sekanina filter. And then the three jets are separated by 120 degrees, equally from each other on the sky. It looks like a very geometric, symmetric structure. And, the interesting question is whether that is a technological signature, because if you just have random spots on the surface of a rock that have pockets of ice on them, why would they be organized in such an orderly fashion of three mini jets equally separated from each other on the sky, in addition to this anti-tail, which is opposite to what you usually see in comets? You see a tail extending away from the sun. So this jet structure is really peculiar, not explained. It makes one of the anomalies in the list that I provided on medium.com.
And you have explained quite a bit there that I'm sure everyone's kind of leaning in on, and we're already starting to get some questions from our viewers who just love to kind of, poke away at your mind here. One of the questions we have you seen the clearest images of Atlas?
Yeah, so what we see in the image, we can't really see the nucleus because the resolution of the Hubble Space Telescope is not good enough at that distance to resolve the nucleus. It was never good enough, and it would have been much better to have a mission that intercepts the path of 3I Atlas so that we can get a close-up photograph of it. But we don't have that. So all we see is a glowing halo around it, which is extended in the direction of the sun because of the anti-tail. That's what we see in the Hubble image now. That's what we saw in the Hubble image that was obtained early on July 21st, 2025, when the object was heading towards the sun. And that's unusual that there is this anti-tail, a physical jet. It's not a matter of perspective. It's not as if we're looking at it from some special angle, so it looks as if it's pointing at the sun. It actually is pointing at the sun. It was doing that all the way, from the beginning until now. And the question is, what's the physical origin of this anti-tail, which is very peculiar given, what we know about other comets that usually, show a tail away from the sun. But the more peculiar fact is that there are these mini jets that are very symmetrically oriented around the nucleus. And is it related perhaps to a system of thrusters? And I got a number of emails from people who work on propulsion and stabilization of spacecraft, and they said that that is the kind of design that was proposed by some engineers in the past to stabilize spacecraft along 2 dimensions. And if they rotate along the 3rd dimension, you can imagine the anti-tail is representing the 3rd axis. So it could be a technological signature, but it's not a clear-cut evidence for technology. And of course, we are all waiting to see what will happen on March 16th, 2026, when 3I Atlas will come closest to Jupiter. And it comes exactly at the distance where Jupiter's gravity starts dominating relative to the sun's gravity. So the fundamental question is whether it will release any objects that will become satellites of Jupiter. And a natural rock will never do that, because in order to deposit objects that will stay bound gravitationally to Jupiter, they need to cancel out the motion of 3I Atlas, which is quite large relative to Jupiter. So if we see anything like it, we have the Juno spacecraft monitoring Jupiter right now, and we will have 2 other spacecraft reaching Jupiter by 2030, 2031. And these are the European Space Agency's missions that are called the JUICE and the Europa Clipper. So they're on their way there. And if there are any new objects around Jupiter, especially at the Lagrange points, we would notice that.
You mentioned Jupiter, and one of our viewers just asked, could it slingshot around Jupiter and head back toward Earth?
Yeah, that's in principle possible, because the speed of the object, 3I Atlas, is 60 kilometers per second, which happens to coincide with the escape speed from the surface of Jupiter. Jupiter is not a solid object, it's a gaseous planet, a very massive gaseous planet, may have some rock at its center, but it's also diffuse, and it's a gas giant planet. And but at the surface of Jupiter, the escape speed of, if you wanted to launch a spacecraft that would escape Jupiter, it would need to have a speed of 60 kilometers per second, which is exactly the speed of 3I Atlas. And if 3I Atlas were to graze the surface of Jupiter, it would actually be deflected significantly along its path and could, in principle, return back towards Earth. But it's not coming any so close to Jupiter. It's actually, according to the current trajectory, it will pass within 53.5 million kilometers from Jupiter. So it doesn't look like it's coming close enough to be deflected significantly, and we should expect it to continue along its path. But it could release some smaller objects, of course, and that's what we should monitor for. Of course, if it released already some small objects, they could find the Earth by now or in a few months from now. I was talking before about toxic material that is not able to maneuver. We know that 3I Atlas released cyanide, for example, that would have been quite harmful for life on Earth, but it will never reach us. No concerns about that.
Very interesting stuff. Now, someone says, do you have any update on the CIA refusing to confirm or deny that they have gathered files on Atlas?
Well, no, they are not disclosing any of that. They said that they cannot deny nor confirm the existence or non-existence of such materials, documents. And to me, that illustrates the fact that they did have conversations. And we know that it was not, these conversations were not limited to the US, because there was an end of the year summary in Russia where Vladimir Putin was asked by journalist what he heard from the intelligence agencies that he has about 3I Atlas. And he was very knowledgeable about 3I Atlas and said that the scientists informed him that it's just a comet. And so these discussions, these conversations happened obviously also in Russia. But at the moment, at least, the public message is that this is just a comet, nothing to worry about, has no technology, there is no evidence. However, these conversations are not really addressing the fundamental questions about the anomalies of 3I Atlas, which are the most interesting aspects. The only opportunity for us to learn is by paying attention to the unusual facts about 3I Atlas. As I mentioned, the existence of this system of 3 jets around the nucleus, and actually the orientation of the trajectory, the path of 3I Atlas in the orbital plane of the planets.
The anti-tail. I'm learning here. So you were mentioning Russian President Vladimir Putin and his response to this, and it leads me to one of the questions that was just posed online. Are scientists in other countries paying as close of attention as you and others here in the U.S.?
Yes, in fact, some of my collaborators are in other countries. I have 2 collaborators from Italy, and they are very focused on getting as much data as possible. One of them just wrote to me overnight. I read it before my morning jog at sunrise, in freezing Boston. And he said, in principle, we cannot detect objects as big as a football field beyond 10 times the Earth-Sun separation. And that is true. And so in principle, if there was a base of technological objects, let's say, beyond the orbit of Neptune, and these objects would be of order the size of objects that we develop. The biggest object that we produced is the Starship rocket, and it's about 120 meters in size, including the booster. So such an object, including the booster, would not be visible. It would not reflect enough sunlight for our best telescopes to detect it beyond the distance of Neptune. So there could be a lot of objects out there that we've never noticed. And if there is a camp of the such technological objects out there. We would not know about it unless one of them comes close. And of course, this assumes that we can only detect them from the reflection of sunlight. We have a lamppost, the sun, that allows us to search for keys under the lamppost. But if any of these objects generates their own light, of course, we could detect them even if they're smaller in size. And I wrote a scientific paper I published in 2011 talking about sources of artificial lights in the outer solar system. In principle, if there is an object that produces as much light as the city of Tokyo, at the distance of Pluto, we can potentially detect it with the deepest images of the Hubble Space Telescope, the James Webb Space Telescope. We should be able to detect a city like Tokyo in the outskirts of the solar system. So, and it's easy to tell that it produces its own light and not just reflecting sunlight, because an object like that will change its brightness inversely with distance squared, just like a light bulb, whereas an object that reflects sunlight is getting dimmer much faster as it go inversely with distance to the fourth power. So we can tell the difference between an object that produces its own light and an object that is just reflecting sunlight. But there wasn't any serious search for such objects. And in fact, I asked one of the pioneers who found many trans-Neptunian objects beyond the distance of Neptune, the farthest planet. I asked him whether his name is Tim Brown, and whether he checked if any of them produces their own light. And Mike Brown said, no, why should I check? It's obvious that they are just reflecting sunlight. The brightness should change inversely with distance to the fourth, and he didn't really check. So many times in science, the fact that we cannot imagine something different than what we are used to prevents us from checking.
Yeah, I could totally understand that. You were mentioning a lot about light and the sun, and someone asked, with the bright sun, will that give us better pictures?
Yes, in principle, we would get a better image of 3 Atlas. There should be a brightness surge that was available to us on January 22nd. And my hope is that in the coming days and weeks, we will see that those measurements of how much brighter did 3 Atlas get. It's not just the nucleus, it's also the dust particles. For the same reason, it doesn't matter which object we're talking about. When they're illuminated from the same direction that we are observing them, they get brighter, and just like the full moon. And so my hope is that we can learn much more about those dust particles, the structure of them. There should also be a change in the polarization of the light that is reflected by them, depending on the angle that we are observing them relative to the sun. So all of that information, I actually suggested that observers around the world will look at it at 3 Atlas on January 22nd. My hope is that some of them did.
All right. So where do we go from here? You marked March 16, that's sitting in my head now as another time that we need to have another conversation with you. But what happens now?
Yeah, so there is a lot of data that was collected when 3I Atlas came closest to Earth that is not available publicly. The teams that have that data did not disclose it. That includes data from the Webb telescope. They're still analyzing it, presumably, and writing their scientific papers. And once this data comes out, and all the data that leads us to March 16th, when 3 Atlas will come closer to Jupiter, once all of that data is available publicly, it will be very clear as to whether we can understand the anomalies of 3 Atlas in terms of some natural processes. And at that point, I will be glad to speak with you and tell you my opinion about how likely this object is to be natural versus technological. As of now, it's most likely to be natural, but it might display some new anomalies that make it really strange.
Okay, all right. Well, we know that we're going to be calling you back for that. And I just want to let you know we got an email that Kim Kardashian's store is opening up here pretty soon. And all of us immediately thought of you and said, hey, we have got to get to Kim Kardashian for Avi Loeb.
I will be delighted to speak with her if she has any questions. And science is for everyone, and we are all curious. And it's actually fun to figure out things, by looking at the sky. And if she has any questions, feel free to reach out to me.
If we can get her, we promise you we are absolutely going to ask her about
I should mention one more thing that happened, and that is yesterday, the daughter of David Rockefeller, she's 82 years old, came to my office at Harvard, and she wanted to tell me that she was fooled by an AI-generated fake video on YouTube that was providing content that I don't approve, and basically saying that we received the message from the passengers on 3i Atlas that they are not interested in visiting Earth because they're very disappointed by what they learn about us, humanity. And she believed it and shared the video with a lot of her friends, only to find out that it was fake AI generated. So as a result of that visit, I decided to create my own YouTube channel in which I would show real content, scientifically validated content that I work on, and by that prevent from fake videos that spread misinformation from, becoming popular. And I think it's a real risk in the future because it's the biggest threat to science based on integrity, on facts, evidence, and truthfulness. When people are trying to make money by spreading misinformation, and just like junk food is not good for our bodies, junk intellectual food is not good for our brains. And so once I have this YouTube channel available within a few days from now, I will be able to ask the authorities at YouTube to remove all these fake videos. I think we have to learn how to live with the risks from AI. AI is a tool that we can use. It may be a blessing or a curse, depending on whether it's used by good actors or bad actors. And we have to make sure that it's only used by good actors.
We absolutely do. I mean, we just had a press conference that we took here right around this time yesterday with some folks at Capitol Hill that were talking about AI being used for nefarious purposes. So certainly let us know more, and it's always good to have verifiable ways of getting information. So I'm sure, especially with what you do for a living and the information that you're putting out, there will be more and more people trying to use that information for bad, but thank you for using it for good.
Well, thank you so much for having me. And the technology is unable to reproduce a conversation like the one between the two of us. So we are safe in that regard. Everyone should believe the content that the two of us are exchanging. They can only produce a video of me speaking without an interviewer. So, but of course, these technologies will get better, and we have to protect ourselves from misinformation. That's one reason, one of the reasons that we get polarization in society, driven by interest groups that have an agenda that is not truthful. And so we have to fight that. And thank you so much for creating content that is believable.
Well, thank you as well. And we'll have another one of these conversations not too long from now. Thank you so much for your time, Professor Loeb. We always enjoy having you here, and our viewers always go crazy being able to pick your brain.
My pleasure and privilege. Thanks for having me.
All right. Take care. Have a good weekend. Give us 2 minutes, everyone. We'll come back and set you up for what you can expect in the 2 o'clock hour. Much more Chicago Live after this. Welcome back, everyone. 2:02 right now. Let's talk about where we go from here on Chicago Live. We appreciate you being here for our second hour of the show here. Plenty to get to. Obviously, our big story of the day is what's going on weather-wise outside. We have dangerously cold temperatures outside that everyone in our area is experiencing. But some folks to our south and to the east of us could see even worse than what we're getting right now in terms of precipitation and things of that nature. So we're going to talk extensively over the next couple of hours about weather, but from many different angles here. So around 2:45, we've called in the Tollway Minutemen to talk about the work that they do to keep us rolling. You know, I mean, just because we have dangerously cold temperatures outside, the extreme cold doesn't mean that people don't have to go to work, doesn't mean that they don't have to get around town. And so we're going to be talking to them about the wonderful work that they do to keep us on the go, even with temperatures like this. Around 2:30, I am so looking forward to a conversation with a group that is helping small business or entrepreneurs throughout our area, and especially on the south and west sides, to get the mentoring, to get the access that they need. I mean, sometimes just those two things, mentoring and access, can be the difference between someone's business thriving and someone's business that doesn't get off the ground. We have so many talented, incredibly smart people in this area with big ideas in their brains, but then those two things, access and mentorship, sometimes if those things don't come into play, and especially at the right time, you really never know what it could be, what that big idea could turn into. So really looking forward to the conversation about how this group is helping turn people's dreams into real businesses that thrive in time. Also, we're going to have a conversation right now about the youngest of our residents here in the city. Those who are in the CPS schools, and what we're seeing in terms of the numbers, where they stand now, where they've been, where they're going over time, because it counts, or it helps us to look at maybe some greater societal issues that are going on as well. So I want to bring in the Chief of Policy, Hal Woods, from Kids First Chicago, to talk a little bit more about what we're seeing with CPS. Thank you so much for your time.
Unita, thank you for having me.
All right, so you all have some new reporting here about a potential crisis with CPS. Explain to me what that crisis would be.
So in the report, we look at different trends that are happening with Chicago Public Schools enrollment. And so we're looking at both the fact that we have fewer school-age children in the city of Chicago, so fewer babies are being born in the city of Chicago. We also have fewer families that are choosing to go to Chicago Public Schools, which is a new phenomenon. And so when we talk about the crisis, it is not so much that CPS has declining enrollment as the crisis, but for right now, we don't really have a concrete plan as a city to support our students at smaller schools to make sure they have all the access to the to the extracurriculars, to advanced courses, to all the things that kind of make school worth attending for students. That's what we kind of identify as the crisis in the report.
Very interesting there, because I think people can get a little mixed up just with that headline of declining enrollment. So let's start with support, because we have seen several schools that have closed, over the last few years. So talk a little bit more just in that vein of support needed for schools in this area.
Well, I think if we continue to see the trends that we've seen with enrollment, and to be honest, we did have kind of even modest gains in enrollment over the last 2 years. We had about 9,000 new students, mostly migrant students, that came to Chicago, and that kind of briefly buoyed the enrollment here in the city of Chicago. But if the trends that we saw this year continue, we're going to be operating a much smaller school system. And so how do we make sure that the student experience at our smaller schools is a positive one, right? That could look anything like, do we make sure that there are teachers that can potentially be shared across schools? We've seen some examples of that in fine arts and some of our kind of enrichment programming. Does that mean that we potentially need to just be providing better access to advanced coursework at schools as well? And so it's going to take a creative plan. Right now, we just don't see that planning happening right now in the city of Chicago. That's
really interesting. I think it's the Illinois Policy Group that, in their reporting, they talk about, how those of us who are taxpayers in the city of Chicago are paying for empty desks.
Yeah, I mean, what I would say is, we took a look at the 10 most under-enrolled schools in the city of Chicago, and look, I mean, you're spending anywhere between $35,000 to $55,000 in some cases per student at those schools. I think the thing that's a little bit different, though, or I think a better way to look at it is, if you combine the combined budgets of those 10 schools, it's about $30 million, and that's not something to sniff at. Don't get me wrong. But CPS has a $10 billion budget. They have a deficit next year of about $500 million. So one thing that we're really trying to say is, don't look at school closures or consolidations as some sort of panacea for the district's budget crisis or budget challenges. But really, if we want to have a serious conversation about what these smaller schools mean, it's got to start with the student experience. We have to actually listen to the students at these schools and understand what is their experience. And then those policymakers, decision makers need to then adapt the system to better support their needs.
I love that. And I want to circle back around to that. But I also want to ask you about the issue of fewer babies. I mean, is this something, I talked about right before I got to you, even the fact that some of these things that are pointed out are have greater societal impact. Obviously CPS is like a microcosm of society as a whole. So is this something that we're just seeing throughout the country, fewer babies, and therefore here in the city of Chicago, that's what we're seeing have an impact on CPS?
This is a phenomenon that is certainly outside of CPS's control, and it is one that we've seen across the country, to be quite honest. We had about 46,000 babies being born in the city of Chicago in 2005. Now we have about 26,000. So we've almost halved the number of children that are being born every year in the city of Chicago. There's good reasons for that, right? We see families, particularly women who are staying in school for longer, starting careers a little bit later in life. That's had an impact. But we also know that childcare costs have been certainly a contributing factor to fewer babies being born. We've seen examples also where, essentially, we've had depopulation loss in Chicago, right? I mean, this has been something that has been discussed by demographers who've looked at Chicago, right? We've seen, 250,000 Black Chicagoans who are no longer in the city, often going to suburbs right outside Chicago, potentially Northwest Indiana. There's a litany of reasons why families have left the city of Chicago, not having to do with the education system whatsoever.
Yeah, and let's kind of pick that apart, because when we were getting ready to have this conversation, when I saw that we were going to have this conversation today, the first thing that came to my mind was, well, wait a minute. Over the last 2 years, which you pointed out, we have had some increases, but then it directly points to what you were just saying in terms of demographic switches as well, when we get to another year of, oh, now we have a decline.
Correct. And so, the factors that have contributed to a declining population in Chicago, right, fewer babies being born. We've seen, examples of gentrification, right? So folks that live in certain communities, they're housing insecure, more affluent folks move into those communities and kind of prices those folks out. Those have all been constant. The difference was the immigration, right? We had seen declining immigration into Chicago, particularly from Latin America, particularly from Latin American countries. That changed over the last couple of years, right? We know we had an influx of migrant folks, and those included students in the city. Now we've seen a decline of new students in Chicago across every racial ethnic group, across every grade level going to this school year. I think particularly what we've seen from the administration around immigration policies, we have to assume that's going to continue at least for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, and so we did see that influx of students that came in, that were brought here, a couple of years ago. And then we also have a lot of families that are, and especially at the beginning of the school year, were afraid to send their students to school during the peak of the immigration enforcement in this area.
Yeah, the timing of Operation Midway Blitz at the beginning of the school year, we heard it from families at Kids for Chicago, part of our network, where families saying, my child is afraid to come to go to school, and not so much only because of their own situation, but because mom and dad, grandmother, grandparent are going to be home when I get home, right? And so that caused a huge, significant uptick in absenteeism for students, and students maybe who went enrolled, but then maybe pulled back. We also heard from parents about students who did go to school, but were just suffering in school, right? The anxiety, the mental health toll that it was taking when we had the immigration enforcement actions back in the fall.
Yeah, and so that kind of covers Latinos in the school district, which is a good portion of CPS schools.
46%, yeah.
Yeah, and your next largest demographic would be Black students. You mentioned a lot of families that are moving to Northwest Indiana, and maybe the suburbs.
We've just seen a depopulation of our Black residents in Chicago for really the last 25 years. And there are smarter folks than I who've studied that and some of the reasons. We talked about access to housing. We've heard about, certainly even unemployment rates or wage gaps between Black Chicagoans and other even Latinx Chicagoans or white Chicagoans. So there's not a single reason, why we've seen folks move out, but it is a trend that has continued in the Black student population within CPS continues to decline in proportion to even our Latinx population, white or Asian students as well.
Mm-hmm. And I'm seeing here that at the same time, other student populations such as white, Asian, and multiracial students have seen modest increases.
And it's I would say it's probably less of like the percentages are going up, maybe not so much the numbers. I think a little bit with our Asian population, a little bit with our white population over the last 10 years, but it's also just the proportion, right? Because we're just losing Black students a lot faster, and those student groups are kind of staying more steady and more constant.
Mm-hmm. That's important to point out there and to make that distinction. So let's talk more about the student experience. What are some of the things that are missing, or that, when we think of CPS schools, there's always the argument about funding for schools, both the funding fight that happens with the budget. There's whenever the property tax bills come in, we talk with the treasurer for Cook County, and she says, look right at the top of your bill. I mean, the highest portion of it is going to CPS schools. So there should be a great interest in making sure these schools are top notch.
Yeah, I think a couple things. So one is, CPS used to fund schools exclusively based on the number of students that they serve. That changed a couple of years ago under Mayor Lightfoot's administration and under Mayor Johnson's administration. And so schools do have more support, kind of a net, kind of a safety net of a certain number of teachers, et cetera. The problem, though, is, you still, the fewer students you have, the fewer opportunities students have, right? So that might mean fewer electives. We've seen examples, it's been reported, by Chicago media about where students who will say, I had to take the same elective 3 years in a row. Like,
Whoa.
I like your book. I don't want to take it 3 years in a row, right? You've got, high school classes that might have, 25 kids in your senior year. You can't really field a sports team, have clubs, drama, etc. Some of the things that the kind of the wraparound things that kind of make school fun and enjoyable for a young person. And so we don't often hear from these students, right? We don't hear from students about what these experiences are. Sometimes you hear students say, I love my small school. I like having my teachers know me, they know my family, and then they like that extra support. So both things can be true. But we as a city are not doing enough to elevate their voices and to hear from them about the experience, and then designing with them some of the adaptations that the district needs to meet this continuing demographic and family choice trend too. One thing we didn't mention is, we've had about 75% of families in Chicago who've chosen to go to CPS every year, about the last decade or so. Since the pandemic, a little before the pandemic, it's now dropped to about 70%. And so in addition to these demographic trends, you're also seeing fewer choice. And so you're seeing a higher private school enrollment and higher even homeschool enrollment than we saw in previous years.
Very interesting. And when you talk about, electives being like wraparound, sure, they can be fun. But I also find that, especially for high school kids, but even maybe middle school kids, if we as adults really think back on the things that maybe even had an impact on where we sit right now, it might point back to some of the electives that we chose during middle and high school.
Absolutely. Music, the arts, creativity, not everyone's favorite subject is going to be, math or reading or literacy, or science. And so these are the things the opportunities for students to be with other students that, again, when you have a smaller enrollment school, you're just not going to be able to have those experiences. And so, we see in the absenteeism for CPS students, right? We've seen since the pandemic, we're looking at 42% absenteeism. Our folks at University of Chicago came out with a wonderful report earlier this week that talked about the absenteeism rates in Chicago public schools and the importance of making sure that students feel connected to school. We've seen declines in that in student surveys around just like their well-being, their connectedness to schools as well. And so this is going to require everyone who has a stake in the education sector here in Chicago to listen to these students and to design plans that acknowledge this demographic trend, but ultimately ensures that every student, every neighborhood has access to a high quality education experience, not just academically, but all the other things that make school worth going to.
Tell me a little bit more about Kids First Chicago and how you all take your knowledge base, the research that you're doing, and put it into action.
So we have a network of about 1,000 parents in the city of Chicago, primarily on the northwest, west, southwest, and south sides of the city. And so we, I think, a combination of sometimes, like with this, we took a look at this data. We wanted to elevate it to parents in our network to have them just understand what is happening in the system. But sometimes when the data that we have is actually comes from parents in our network. And so we really work with parents to identify their priorities and then help them get in touch with and advocate for the solutions that they want to see to effectuate the change in the system that not only benefits their children, but also benefits children across Chicago.
I certainly appreciate being able to have this conversation with you. I think it's so important that we all kind of understand what's going on within the school system. Again, it's we should want to know more and all be invested in knowing more, regardless of whether we have children in the system or those who don't have children in the system, because your taxes are still going to the CPS school system. So thank you so much. We should all be so invested that we want more information like what you have shared with us today.
Thank you, Nita.
All right.
Take care and stay warm.
Oh, we will try. Same to you. It's about 2:20, everyone. A few live events that are going on. Let's first just take you to, let's see, this is Minneapolis here, where ICE protesters are going through the streets here. You can see hundreds of people in the streets. Of course, boy, has Minneapolis been through it over the last few weeks here of ramped up immigration enforcement in the city, and shootings that have taken place at the hands of federal agents. One of those, of course, being deadly, Renee Nicole Good, who was killed that first week of the ramped up efforts. About 2,000 federal agents that were sent into the city of Minneapolis. And you can see these people who are outside now in cold conditions. I mean, the conditions that we have here in Chicago, that we've been talking about here in Chicago. I mean, you see people are bundled up out there, but they want to express their views as to what's taken place there in Minneapolis, has been over the last several days. Just yesterday, Vice President J.D. Vance was in Minneapolis, and he was speaking to some of the things that are happening there. And the federal government is doubling down, that they are going after the worst of the worst individuals who are in the country illegally, and they're not going to stop until they do even more in that area. But of course, people in the area feel like there's more chaos that's coming from their efforts than actual good that's coming from it right now. In fact, so today, about 700 businesses closed in the city of Minneapolis today. Many people who were skipping work, school, and shopping in an economic protest. So you think about all of the different ways that an area is impacted. This was all for an economic protest, as they are now rallying here in downtown Minneapolis, these organizers demanding ICE agents to leave the state of Minnesota here. The protest just began just about 20 minutes ago. You can see people just kind of milling about here, walking through this area here of the Commons, what's called the Commons in downtown Minneapolis, with the organizers leading people there again in a protest that's been taking place throughout the day. But again, people are bundled up because they are too experiencing the extreme cold temperatures outside today, and they are anticipating a cold weather advisory even through Saturday morning. So just like those of us here in the city of Chicago dealing with extreme temperatures outside. In fact, one of the meteorologists in that area says they were expecting about negative 11 degrees today. You see these people out here, signs in hand, flags in hand, walking downtown, expressing their views. Negative 11 degrees for the city of Minneapolis today was anticipated. The National Weather Service said, of course, that this is a day most people should be inside. But these people are that passionate that they have filled the streets of Minneapolis in response, again, to the ramped up ICE immigration, the immigration efforts that have been happening in this area. Some activists, in the fact, said that they have organized an economic blackout and this rally, saying that it is an anti-ICE protest, and they have increased their numbers throughout the afternoon here. Again, they've only been out there for about 30 minutes at this point in time, but all of this coming on the heels of two shootings that have taken place in their area at the hands of federal agents. Obviously, there's a lot of debate about how those shootings ended up taking place, why a life was taken. But yes, they were at the hands of federal agents there in Minneapolis. But the federal government says their efforts will not stop there, even though people are now protesting both in the streets with this rally and also with an economic protest, as many things have been shut down in that area. Businesses that decided to shut down in a show of support for these protesters. Maybe some of the business owners even out there among the protesters today there in Minneapolis. We also have a large showing in California. I believe we have a view up above in California where ICE protests have been taking place as well. We've been seeing some of the chopper views off and on from California. Okay, it just went away, so we don't have that shot again. But much of what we're seeing here in Minneapolis, we were also seeing in California today, with protesters taking to the streets there as well to make their voices heard in disappointment, in disagreement, if you will, as to what's taking place in their cities where ICE is concerned. And especially for obviously in California, the weather conditions are much different. We were seeing some people even in short sleeve shirts. So a much different scenario getting out in the streets when the weather conditions kind of say you can be outside for longer periods of time. But of course, for a state like Minneapolis, much like Chicago right now, dealing with negative temperatures outside, and these people are undeterred. They are upset with what's happening in their cities, and they are undeterred by the weather conditions. They are gathering here, and you see one, poster right there in front of the camera. Again, for Renee Nicole Good, who was killed at the hands of ICE agents and others, as they have seen ramped up efforts in their area. So we're going to continue to watch what's happening there as people start to gather there. If we get that view back again from California, we will take you back there as well. I believe that these are just a few. I think they were also expected to have another protest in New York, for instance, today as well, as many people are just wanting to make sure their voices are heard about what's happening throughout the country. And as we get these live pictures, we're going to try to go to them as often as possible so that you can see for yourself, not just us, kind of saying what's happening, but so you can see people gathering, regardless of the weather conditions outside, to make a statement, to have a show of solidarity about what's happening in their cities, what's happening in their states. We've even seen things, of course, here in the Chicago area just months ago with Operation Midway Blitz that was operating here at the height of Operation Midway Blitz. I believe overall, the Trump administration would say that they gathered about 3,000 undocumented immigrants during that time, and they call that a success. That during that time period, they were able to take that many people off of the streets. But of course, what we also saw during that time period is that there were American citizens who were also detained. And again, the greater area is also impacted in so many different ways. We are still seeing the legal processes take place throughout our area from Operation Midway Blitz, which at its height was during August, September, and October here in our area. But still, now that we're in 2026, in January, almost February of 2026, we are still seeing the legal ramifications of what happened during that time play out. And many would tell you we're still seeing the economic impacts of that time period as well here in our area, especially places like Little Italy, where many people didn't feel the freedom to be able to roam about, to shop about as much as they were before those ramped up immigration efforts. So a lot that's happening throughout the country right now, things that we have seen even in our own area. It looks like we are standing by for a couple of press conferences that'll be happening soon as well in a couple of different states. Many of the press conferences that we are anticipating over the next 30 minutes or so have to do with the weather that's outside. In fact, let's listen in here.
Particularly those who are in need of assistance. Aside from MBTA Transit Police, our in-station personnel, we've augmented that throughout the storm event to make sure that folks can get any services, MBTA or otherwise, that they need. As far as MBTA services, on Sunday we anticipate operating a regular weekend Sunday schedule across all modes of MBTA transportation. On Monday, we expect to operate a regular weekday service for our light rail, heavy rail, and bus operations, as well as paratransit. Commuter rail on Monday, we anticipate operating a storm schedule, which is a reduced schedule focused on getting essential workers in and out of Boston and make sure that we have a full complement of equipment and crews available on the property.
All right, so we just listened in just to a moment there of officials in Massachusetts who are briefing the public there. I'm not sure of the gentleman who is speaking right now, but to his right is the governor of Massachusetts, Governor Healy, who is standing to his right there on the screen. So there are many different agencies that are speaking to the public there in Massachusetts as they are getting ready for severe winter storms to hit their area in the next few hours here. So again, weather is our big story of the day. We're also seeing, again, the press conferences that are happening due to weather. Ohio, New Jersey, Massachusetts, where we're seeing press conferences, and then in some other states like Minneapolis or Minnesota and California, we're seeing protests that are taking place. As we're seeing live events that are popping up, we will try to take you to them. But we're going to take a 2-minute break here, and then we're going to come back with our next, conversation that we've set up about help for small business owners, and especially those entrepreneurs who are trying to get up to the level of being a small business owner in our area. Stand by, 2 minutes, and we'll be right back. All right, welcome back, everyone. 2:32 right now this afternoon, and there is a Chicago nonprofit that is training, coaching, and connecting entrepreneurs in under-resourced neighborhoods, both on the south and west sides, with everything that they need to succeed as business owners in the long run. And so I'm so happy to have Sunshine Enterprises Director of Community Business Academy, Carol Waits, with me right now. Thank you so much for your time on this Friday.
Thank you for having me. I hope you are keeping warm, and I'm happy to be here with you today.
I'm glad that we're both sitting inside having this conversation for sure. It's an easy way to keep warm.
It's an easy way.
Tell me a little bit more about what you all do. You know, I kind of gave just a topical introduction, but tell me a little bit more in detail about what you all do.
You know, I'm really excited to share what we do because a lot of people might not know that Sunshine Enterprises has been in Chicago in the small business ecosystem for over 12 years. Our Community Business Academy really targets underrepresented communities to create a pathway to entrepreneurship so that we can create economic vitality in the neighborhoods where they live and work. It's through a 12-week learning process that's very simple and easy that meets the learner where they are. So they get all of the business fundamentals to take that passion or that hustle that they may have right now and turn it into a profitable business.
Is this new, or are we just finding out about it?
Well, unfortunately, I think you're new finding out about it, but that's okay. You know, we can catch you up. We can catch you up because we're a staple in this ecosystem. We have graduated almost 600 people through the Community Business
Wow.
Academy. Just last semester, we ended in December. We had about 135, and we're gearing up for our spring semester, which is why I'm so excited to be here today. We have an upcoming info session on Tuesday, January 27th at 6 p.m. online. You can get all the details at Facebook, Sunshine Enterprises Chicago. All the details are there. Why is that info session so important? Because we want you to ask questions about the program so that you can come on and learn about how to stand up your business. You know, a lot of times people are stuck in their minds, as you have shared in other broadcasts, whether it's the fear of success or fear of failure. So this is the confirmation for your listening and viewing audience. This is the confirmation that you need to start that business that you've been thinking about. And Sunshine Enterprises is here to help you. Just $99, and we have fee waivers available, but the program itself is valued at over $3,000 because you get 12 weeks of intense learning and business simulations to support your business idea.
I love it. Take that dream, make it a reality. And when you talk about those 12 weeks, and since I'm new to it, but you all are true to it, tell me a little bit about the difference that has made for some people who have come through your program before. Give us some testimonials.
Sure. So, you know, you have an idea and you're just not sure if it's something that would be of value to anyone. Well, we have a person, Nicole Sane out of Hyde Park, who created Talk Toothpaste. Why did she create a toothpaste? Because someone in her family was allergic to fluoride. So it's a fluoride allergy-free toothpaste. Then you have entrepreneurs like Tiffany Williams of Exquisite Catering, who has blown up. She provides backstage and craft services for many of the concerts that travel to Chicago and the Northwest Indiana area. That's another success story. Or Jatan Priest, you might have seen some of her graphic work in commercial and residential properties. She was an artist that came to our program. So art is a business too. I don't want to leave that out. Art is a business too. Or Jessica House, of Just Dip It Tacos. You know, she had her grandmother's recipes, and then she created a business around those recipes called Just Dip It Tacos. So those are just a handful of some of the success stories. But I think our next success story is actually watching this program right now. They have an idea that they have been sitting on for a long time, and someone has told them, you should start a business. And we want that person to join our info session on Tuesday, January 27th. Online. Just go to Facebook for the details so they can start that business this spring when our class begins on March 3rd.
You are good. Yes, absolutely. I believe somebody out there is watching who may be able to benefit from it as well. Tell me this, if we break down training, coaching, connecting,
Sure.
let's start with, you mentioned the 12 weeks of training. Like what does that look like?
Okay. So first and foremost, there might be people that have not been in school for a while. So when they hear training or learning, it's like, oh, I don't like school. I don't do school. School wasn't good for me. Okay, still come to our program. I'll tell you why, because it's called Community Business Academy because you're surrounded by your peers from the community, people that often have the same challenges or experiences that you may have. So you learn in a collective and supportive environment. The first week focuses on the entrepreneurial mindset. It's a mindset of resilience for entrepreneurs and solopreneurs. You know, we could take you right into accounting and bookkeeping and marketing, but you got to have your mind right for what's going to happen.
Yeah.
There is not one entrepreneur that has not gone through ups and downs. And as you know, looking at social media, the Instagrams and the TikToks of the world, there might be a perception that success is automatic. So we start with helping you understand the mindset and the resiliency that's required. You then go into a business simulation. Why a business simulation? Because we want you to practice how you're going to play. In our learning environment, we want you to make the mistakes in the classroom so that you can learn from them before you launch your business. We also help you understand the importance of your personal budget and your personal credit. Even though you're starting a business, you still need to have your money in order. Now, there's somebody listening right now that's saying, my credit isn't good, I'm going through a challenging time. Still come, because we can help you with that. We have people that talk to you about your credit. We help you with your personal budgeting and understanding, because before you can get business credit, your personal credit has to be in place.
Yeah.
That is still no hindrance for you to come and learn about how to do that. And we have free resources for you. So we talked about the mindset, practice how you want to play, budgeting and credit. Then you go into nitty gritty of competition and target market. Because no matter what you are creating as a business, there may or may not be someone who's doing exactly what you're doing. But that doesn't mean they don't do it as good as you do. So we want you to understand the competition and target market so you can have a great landscape for starting your business. Is that kind of what you're looking for? In terms
Absolutely.
Of what
you are breaking it down and breaking it down well. So what kind of coaches come in? What kind of coaches do you bring into this?
Sure. So all of our instructors are also coaches. Our instructors are small business owners themselves, people that have gone through the ups and downs of business. One of our instructors, Javon Nicholas, owns Flavor Unit food manufacturing, and she knows the ups and downs of the business. Liz is going to kill me for forgetting her name, but our partners at New Covenant, they are also instructors, and they spend a lot of time focusing on the financial health of the learners. So you get coaching once we know what your challenges are. This is not a monolithic approach. We meet you where you are, because our classes are tailored to support the adult learner. So if you prefer to be in class in person, we have a class for you. We have a 12-week program where all the classes meet in person. If you prefer to do everything online because of the way your schedule is set up, we have a 100% online program as well. If you prefer a little mix of the both because you're juggling life, family, kids, parents, or whatever, we have a hybrid program. So we meet you where you are, and your coach is infused into that process to support you through our platform on Google Classroom, through one-on-one coaching, as well as support through your various homework assignments.
Why the south and west sides of the city?
Well, southwest and Evanston, because on the south and west sides, unfortunately, we know there are underrepresented communities that have suffered through economic disparities to no fault of their own. And so we want to help people in those communities take that hustle, the side hustle that they've been doing, that gives them the extra money on the side or helps them connect between paychecks, to turn that into passion and then to a profitable business. I am a lifelong Chicagoan. I grew up on the South Side, born and raised in Chatham. And what I saw growing up were small businesses that were really the foundation of the neighborhood. That's where you went and got your groceries or your shoes or your dry cleaning, so on and so forth. So we want those communities to return to the economic vitality that they once knew and serve the people that are living there now to create that vitality in their own neighborhoods.
Yeah. I love that aspect of taking your passion and being able to make it profitable, because there are so many people who are doing things that if they just put a number on it, could really be making some money if they really understood. And I remember we had Monique, and I'm forgetting her last name, but she has like a hair care line now, Mael, and she came in the studio. I think she had just written a book, and one of the things she talked about was how many people just don't understand how to scale a business, how that can separate those who take things to a next level versus those who just kind of you're just doing what you love.
That's why In the other 7 weeks that I didn't go through earlier, we talk about cash flow. We talk about bookkeeping. We talk about marketing. We talk about the legal structures, and we help you learn what works best for you. Because here's the thing. Generally, when people are transitioning from a side hustle to a business, there's a perception that, okay, this is my hustle. I can pay my bills. Well, if something happens, can you still pay your bills? So we want you to understand why pricing is so important, how much it costs for you to make or produce that widget that you are doing or that service that you provide, so that you can scale your business so you're not burned out as an entrepreneur. Because we know when you're a one-person shop or you and your family are running this business, it's easy to get burnt out, particularly if you're doing it in between one full-time job or another full-time job. Let's call a thing here.
Yeah.
But that resiliency is what makes most entrepreneurs or solopreneurs very, very successful. And we want you to have a clear line of sight so that you understand you might need to charge a little more, or maybe you can find another place to provide the supplies that you need to have a more scalable product or service to offer.
It was Monique Rodriguez. That's who I was trying to think of. Monique Rodriguez from Mayel. Thank you so much, Carol Waits, for coming on the show and introducing us to what you do so well, this Community Business Academy. I think the world of entrepreneurs, and again, the resilience, as you were saying, that it takes to really take an idea and bring it to full life. And so God bless those of you all who are stepping in to help people get it off the ground and really, again, like you said, turn your passion into a profitable business. Thank you so much. I hope that people will ring your phone very soon.
Thank you. I look forward to coming back if your learners or viewers want to hear more.
All right. You take care.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Great conversation there. Love what they do. It's 2:46, and we're going to take a 2-minute break here. Then we're going to bring in the Tollway Minutemen, who are helping us quite a bit in these temperatures that we have outside. All right, 2:48 as we give you a live look out over the city. Isn't it beautiful? I mean, regardless of what the temperatures are looking like outside, every vantage point, it's always beautiful in the city overlooking the city of Chicago. But boy, is it cold outside. So meteorologist Mark Strell is here with me now. We're going to get to your forecast in just a moment because we definitely want to see where we're going from here, hoping for good things. But first, we want to talk with the Deputy Chief of Traffic and Incident Management with the Illinois Tollway Minutemen, Steve Mednes. Thank you so much for your time, sir.
Sure. Good afternoon. Thanks for having me.
So you all are a specialized emergency traffic patrol unit. Tell me about how that comes into play, the emergency aspect of it especially, when we have temperatures like what we're seeing outside.
Well, I mean, the entire event's an emergency if you think about it. Any minor situation, incident, breakdown that would require a response or a need of some sort becomes elevated during these types of conditions. So we want to make sure that people are aware that we have resources available, what those are, how to get a hold of us, knowing your location, direction, all that good stuff. So, but we do that. We do that Monday through Friday with our safety service patrol, our help trucks. 4 a.m. to 8 p.m. on a regular basis. But this is, enhanced now with our zero patrols during these times of severe weather that we're going to be seeing for the next few days.
Tell me about, have you all already started receiving some of those cold weather calls today?
Absolutely. We've kind of been on and off for a little over a week now with the weather that started last weekend. And then once we get into the trend that we're seeing here with the negative or anything below freezing temperatures would constitute that. So we've been fielding these calls, on a daily basis because, again, things happen. People become stranded. Tires go flat. Incidents occur. You might want to run out of fuel or overheat. That sounds like it might or shouldn't happen during cold weather, but overheating does occur. So yeah, we've been fielding, many calls throughout the days and just basically 24 hours. And we're going to continue to do that through Monday morning at least.
Yeah. So you're working 24/7. What should people know in terms of prevention to keep from needing you all? What would be some things that you would suggest people do better?
Sure. And we don't mind it. I mean, that's something that our operators are always really willing and able to help with. Is just about anything. You might just need directions. You might have dropped something, et cetera, and pulled over and just needed a minute. But essentially, especially again, when it comes to these extreme temperatures, seconds and minutes are really crucial to making sure that you get what you need. But again, checking tire pressure before you leave the house, ensuring you've got at least a half a tank of gas before you head out. And making sure cell phones are fully charged and you have a charger with you. Obviously, we want to take precaution and utilize travel for, what is an absolute or an essential need. So if you can avoid travel during these types of weather events, please do so. But again, if you find yourself in need, do your best to get over to a left or a right shoulder. Put your emergency flashers on and dial star 999 while you're out on the Illinois Tollway, and we'll get you assistance as quick as we can.
Steve, we certainly appreciate what you all do on a regular basis, and especially when we are in an emergency situation overall, like what you pointed out here for this weekend. Thank you so much for your time today.
Absolutely. Thank you again for having me.
All right, you
Stay
take
warm.
care. Thank you. We will try. Same to you. And please have your employees to be safe out there,
Right.
while they're trying to help us.
Exactly, and that's key for firefighters, first responders, all the people that take care of us. I mean, they have to take extra care as well.
Yeah, when we think of cold days here in the city of Chicago, we don't get a whole lot like this.
Yeah, we get a few every January, most years. But yeah, this is pretty exceptional. I mean, schools have been closed.
Yeah.
A lot of things have been closed. The museum campus has been been closed. So yeah, it's just a good day to just stay in and hang out with somebody warm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that would be beneficial. So, how long are we staying in these in this bottom level, and when do we get to climb out?
Here's the deal. We are going to get a little colder tonight. We're going back down. We've been below zero most of the day. We're going to go back down below zero overnight tonight, down to about 8 degrees below zero. But we're pretty much at the peak of the cold right now, even though technically we'll get a couple of degrees colder overnight. We're kind of floating down the downhill. That's why we're looking at 10 tomorrow. So that's still very, very cold. Normal average high temperatures in the low 30s. So we're still 22 degrees, 21 degrees below average there for tomorrow.
I'm not seeing a 30 on your screen at all.
No, there's nothing. We're going to be below average for the whole 7-day forecast. But at least you're not seeing zero or numbers with a minus in front of them for daytime highs.
Yeah.
And that's the key. So we're going to be cold Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Not till next Friday do we even get remotely close. And even then, we're still about 8, 9, 10 degrees below average on Friday. This is definitely one of the coldest. It will probably go down as the coldest week of the year. And we have a little bit of snow coming in Saturday night into Sunday.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit more about that precipitation on the screen, because the percentage has been going up throughout the week.
Yeah. I think that we have, I think most of us will see some snowfall. I think the best chance of seeing 4 inches or more is primarily going to be south of the Kankakee River. So I think we'll have a couple of inches of snowfall here. We're on the northern fringe of this. This is that major winter storm that everyone's talking about. It's the storm that's going to affect 170 million people across the country in 35 states. The impact of that, the bullseye, is going to be a lot of snow and a lot of ice right across the mid-south. So from Arkansas, from Texas, all the way back into the Carolinas. What we're most concerned about is major icing, a quarter inch, a half inch of ice, which will snap trees and power lines. That's going to be a big deal for them down there. And also across parts of Kentucky. They're talking about 12 inches of snow.
Whoa.
So we're on the northern edge. We're going to get just a kind of a glancing blow from this snow, so to speak, compared to what's happening down south. But the major effect will be down south, and we're on the north side of that. We get the cold. We'll get some snow out of this, and then stay cold next week, as you saw in the 7-day forecast.
Okay, thank you so much for giving us an update on what's happening out there, both here at home and, as many of the states that really can't handle it, even as well as we do.
I did learn today, Nashville, 40 snowplows. Way to go, Nashville. I mean, it seems like that not that long ago they had like 7.
Listen, I remember being in a blizzard in Oklahoma. There were 2 while I was working there.
2 snowplows.
And no, but we called down because Dallas was going through it as well.
Yeah.
We called down for a phoner with Dallas Emergency Management. They had 2 at that time.
Wow, a whole 2.
2. I mean, think about how often they have to use them.
Well, you would think they would have
rare,
more just for the ice, because they do have ice in Dallas.
Yeah. It was like, what? Huh?
Yeah.
But definitely Chicago doing much better than that.
Yeah.
But they also have to use them a lot more,
We
too.
use ours
All
a
right.
lot.
Thank you so much,
You're
Mark. We
welcome.
know you have to run, but we'll take a 2-minute break, everyone, and we'll be right back with more Chicago Live. 3:00 right now. Thank you so much for staying with us here on Chicago Live as we are now in our final hour of the week. I was going to say of the day. It is of the week here in our 3:00 hour. Let me tell you a little bit about what we are anticipating in this hour. We are continuing to stay on the extreme weather that both here in our area we're experiencing, but also several other states throughout our country. And so as we monitor that, whenever we get a live look of things happening in other states, we're going to be trying to get to those as quickly as possible. But obviously, what's happening here at home? I mean, the beginning of the week, you could look out at any body of water and they just kind of look peaceful. You could see the water moving. And as the week has gone on, you've seen that ice start to form and get thicker and thicker. The U.S. Coast Guard vessels have now hit the Great Lakes this week to begin ice breaking. And so I want to go ahead and bring in Lieutenant William Erickson, the Assistant Operations Officer of the Coast Guard Cutter Mackinac. Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to join you.
Tell me, are you sitting on the vessel right now as we speak?
Yes, ma'am. I'm on the vessel right now. We're currently enjoying a port call in Sault Ste. Marie, Michigan, after a few weeks of some pretty intense ice-breaking operations.
Tell me what an ice-breaking operation entails.
So the Coast Guard Cutter Mackinac, we operate all throughout the Great Lakes. So, and depending on the ice conditions and how we have our ice-breaking vessels allocated throughout the Great Lakes, we could be working anywhere. So we operate in Lake Michigan, Bay of Green Bay. We do a lot of work in the St. Mary's River. We also do a lot of work down in the Detroit-St. Clair River system, Lake Erie, and the Straits of Mackinac, of course. That's where we've been working mostly the last week or so, because that's a pretty substantial choke point for the ice throughout the region. So our goal is to keep commerce and ships moving even during the heavy ice months. So that's billions of dollars of commerce that the big lakers and tankers are carrying all across the Great Lakes maritime transportation system. So things like iron ore, salt, limestone, we're doing our part to keep the commerce moving. Sometimes the ice is so thick that they get stuck or beset in the ice. So we have some expert ship handlers on board that are trained to drive really close to those vessels that are stuck, break that ice, open up the waterways, and keep those vessels moving.
Yeah, you mentioned sometimes they get stuck. There was just an emergency situation for a particular vessel that was out there. I don't know if you all were actually involved in the rescue operation, but I would figure you all would at least know a bit about what happened out there.
Yes, ma'am. So one of those Lakers I mentioned, the Wilfred Sykes, they were going down to Indiana Harbor near Chicago. And when they got to Round Island Passage, just east of the Mackinac Bridge, just a few miles, they encountered some pretty heavy ice. So, as I mentioned, that's kind of one of those choke points where a lot of the ice can accumulate, especially with a few inches of snow on top. That adds a lot of friction and really slows things down. So they were beset in the ice, and so we were called to respond. And within probably an hour or so, we got them moving again, and we escorted them about 25 miles to the west through the Straits of Mackinac to open waters, and they could continue their transit safely and soundly.
Wow, I think it's awesome what you all do. Tell me about, like, in terms of the equipment, like, how exactly are you all getting them unstuck?
So the Mackinac is a very capable vessel. We actually are very unique in that we don't have a rudder on our ships. We have two azipods. You can think of those basically as like 360-degree thrusters that we can manipulate the angles to make us very maneuverable. They have 9,000 horsepower in total, so that's a lot of thrust. So basically the goal is to get as close as possible to the vessels, but as far as necessary to prevent potential collision as we're doing our operations. But we're very safe about it. We have trained professionals. We do a lot of safety briefing. We brief the crew members on the vessels that are beset, so they know what our strategy is. We're looking at the wind conditions. We're looking at the thickness of the ice, the capability of the vessel that's stuck. So those are all factors that go into how we go about breaking them out. Sometimes it's just doing a high-speed pass alongside the beam of the vessel. Sometimes we got to get within several hundred feet of the vessel off their bow and back up into them and then get them going. So every case is unique, and we work with our team of experts and professionals on board to figure out the best strategy for the particular situation.
How do you train for something like that?
The best way to do it is just to throw we call them break-ins, people who are trying to get qualified to drive the ship or learn our engineering plant. We throw them into the evolutions, and they're supervised by a qualified individual, and that experience is really the best way to train. We also have schools throughout the Coast Guard that we send our folks to learn how to drive the ship. So they'll be on simulators and do some different scenarios for ice breaking. But we also send our engineers to different schools to kind of learn our unique plant. So a lot of on-scene training, but also that schooling that accompanies that.
Yeah. How long do you typically stay out on the water when you're in ice breaking mode?
So we could be out for a single day doing an escort through a river or like the Straits of Mackinac, but we could also be out for even up to 3 weeks potentially. It really is going to depend on the conditions of the ice and the status of other vessels that we're working with. So not only the other Coast Guard cutters throughout the Great Lakes, but also our Canadian partners. They have some Coast Guard icebreakers as well that we work together to keep the lakes open.
Are there some markers that say, like throughout the year, that say, okay, this is going to be a particularly, busy season for us versus, we might not be out as much this year?
Yeah, so we pay attention to ice forecasts pretty closely. There are a lot of variables that go into it. So, the forecasts aren't always, 100% accurate. But I think one of the biggest things we look at is the number of days in a row where those water temperatures are below freezing. So if you get a lot of days in a row, especially with like these Arctic, polar vortexes coming through the country, getting those multiple days in a row of below freezing, that allows that ice to build up and get thicker and thicker. And then other factors like the wind, for example, can shift ice to certain areas where it really chokes up And then the snow as well is another factor as well. As I mentioned, that can add a lot of friction and make transiting through that ice a lot more difficult. So those are the kind of factors that we really look to see if it's going to be a average ice year or slightly above average or below average.
Yeah. How long have you been with the Coast Guard?
I've been with the Coast Guard about 3.5 years now. So this is my second tour. The Coast Guard Cutter Mackinac. I transferred this summer, so I've been here about 1.5 years. And before that, I was out on a cutter in Alaska doing a law enforcement fisheries mission. So the Coast Guard is, very, very diverse. A lot of cool things that we do, but domestic ice breaking during these winter months it keeps us busy, and it's an exciting mission for sure.
Yeah, I mean, you all have gone from like delivering the Christmas trees just a few weeks ago to now doing this.
Yeah, there's never a dull moment. Yeah, so the Christmas tree ship is a great tradition that the Mackinac is fortunate to participate in. I did my second one this year, and that was a lot of fun. Also do the Grand Haven Festival, Coast Guard Festival over the summer. And in the fall and the spring, Mackinac is a buoy tending icebreaker. So we do the 8's navigation maintenance, and then we, of course, have our ice breaking in the winter months. So there's always a mission set for the Coast Guard Cutter Mackinac.
I want to ask you a couple of other things. One, what's the most memorable operation that you've been a part of thus far in your time in the Coast Guard?
I would say in the Coast Guard, my last unit on the Coast Guard Cutter Alex Haley out in Kodiak, Alaska, we responded to a vessel in distress way out west on the Aleutian chain. They were dead in the water, and so we had to do a heavy weather towing operation. So that was a pretty intense and memorable experience that I'll never forget. But I would say that the ice breaking here on the Mackinac is definitely my favorite part of the mission. It's a lot of fun to drive the ship. It's definitely the best part of the job. And these weather like the last few weeks has definitely kept us busy.
I love when the drones go up above you all and catch you all breaking up the ice. It's beautiful in its own kind of way.
It is. It's a lot of fun, and we looks like these next couple of weeks are definitely gonna keep us busy, and we'll definitely get some more cool footage like that, I expect, in the weeks to come.
I'm sure. And my final question, what made you choose the Coast Guard out of all the different branches of the military?
Well, I knew I always wanted to serve on board ships, and so being in the Coast Guard also, I think you're always on the coast, so beautiful locations, a really diverse mission set, whether it's law enforcement or ice breaking or prevention, search and rescue. I think that's appealing. Also, my grandfather, he served in the Coast Guard as well, so there's a little bit of a family history too. And hearing his stories about his time in the service was really inspiring.
Oh, how wonderful. I'm so glad that I asked that question so I could hear a little bit about your family history there. I'm sure he is or was so proud of you.
Yes, ma'am, absolutely.
Thank you so much for your service. We certainly appreciate what you all do year-round. Lieutenant J.G. William Erickson, the Assistant Operations Officer of the Coast Guard Cutter Mackinac. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for having me, man. I appreciate it.
Okay, you be safe out there.
Thank you. You too. Stay warm.
We will try to stay warm. All right, everyone. It's just about 3:13 right now. We're going to take a 2-minute break, and then we're going to come back on the opposite side of it, looking at a couple of other things before we get out of here today. 3:15, everyone. And, you know, typically we revere and celebrate our Olympic athletes. But now a former Olympian snowboarder, Ryan James Wedding, has been captured. And this was a $15 million international manhunt that led to his capture. I want to go ahead and bring in Alicia Acuna to tell me a little bit more about how this all came to be and how we ended up here. Okay, all right. I think we don't have her audio. We're going to try to work to fix that and hopefully get her back in here while she still has some time here. But this is a stunning turn of events when you think of someone who we just watched and cheered for, and really on the heels as we get ready for another Olympic Games. When you think about that, we watch these athletes and we're all so excited to see them. Alicia, are you there now?
Hi, Anita. Can you hear me?
I can hear you just fine now. So please take us from the top of, again, how we got to this point.
Yeah, absolutely. So this was someone who was on the radar of the federal government really since 2009. He did serve a little bit of prison time there and was out in 2011, and he has been under indictment ever since. So today, the FBI director, Kash Patel, was on the tarmac at Ontario International Airport in Southern California to announce that Ryan Wedding had been captured in Mexico City. And Patel says that he had just so happened to be in Mexico on a previously scheduled event when this all went down. According to Fox sources, Ryan actually had a negotiated surrender. There was a $15 million bounty on his head, and he apparently, according to Fox sources, really couldn't take it anymore and decided to end his run.
Wow.
Anita?
I mean, how do we go from top athlete to an alleged drug trafficker?
Right. He was part of Team Canada for the 2002 Winter Olympics in Salt Lake City. He's a snowboarder, was a snowboarder. And from what authorities say, somewhere around 2008, his fall from grace began and led him into the sale of drugs, and ultimately ending up, according to federal authorities, became one of the most wanted people on planet Earth for becoming a drug pin, for trafficking about 60 tons a year of cocaine through Colombia, Mexico, the United States, and Canada, and was really working with multiple cartels, including the Sinaloa cartel. But he was considered an international, transnational drug lord, Anita.
And so he's one of several others that they arrested as a part of this organization. What happens to him now?
Well, on Monday, he'll be in federal court in downtown Los Angeles. So that's the process that happens next. The federal authorities, though, say they're still looking for other suspects connected to him. This investigation is nowhere near over. They had already captured more than 36 people in the previous year, or maybe even prior. We're still waiting for details on that. There was an indication, Anita, that authorities were getting close, because in December, the Los Angeles FBI field office announced that the authorities in Mexico, because we were working in partnership with them, had executed multiple warrants. And in those warrants and in those searches, they managed to get $40 million worth of motorcycles and a lot more information and a lot more property. So they were closing in on him, if you kind of look at the pattern where authorities were. But this was a year-long investigation under this administration where they say they were able to get their man.
And let's go over some of the charges that he's facing now, and how long he could end up in prison.
So we're still awaiting the official indictment. We've been checking the court's website today for that. So I can share with you what was shared with us by federal authorities today during that news conference. They say that he ordered the murders of dozens of people, including the killing of a federal witness, someone who is expected to testify against him. So we know that there's that. We know that there's we know that there's drug trafficking charges that we can expect. We also know that they were able to seize multiple weapons. So wait to see firearms charges as well. I'm sure there will be more, but those are that's the baseline of charges that we're anticipating.
Oh my goodness. I mean, there's just so much to this. And I do remember when the pictures came out from that search of all of those motorcycles that you mentioned, and I think this is just shocking to people. Again, we're getting ready for another Winter Olympic Games. And as you said,
Right.
It is a shocking fall from grace.
Yeah, it really is. And the fact that it's an Olympian, I think really strikes the heart of so many people who watch the Olympics. These are supposed to be our athletic heroes, right? And so then to see this happen, and not only someone who turns to a life of crime, but an international criminal that is elevated to become one of the most wanted people. You mentioned those motorcycles that we were talking about. There was also a $15 million Mercedes that they also seized. I don't know how you get to $15 million as a price tag for a Mercedes, but that's what they said they captured. It's absolutely incredible.
Yeah, I mean, did the Mercedes fly? Like, I don't know how you get to that number either for a vehicle.
What do you do? Yeah, I know.
I don't know. So Kash Patel, the FBI director, really taking a victory lap here, a kind of a much needed one for him.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things he pointed out today is that this is one of the sixth capture that they've had in the course of a year of someone on the FBI's top 10 most wanted list, which is incredible when you think about it. That's a huge number for this administration to be able to tout in the work that they've been doing to pursue these criminals. So he was out there. He wanted to, he came, I don't know if he traveled on the plane or separate with the fugitive. I've seen video out there of him getting off the plane, Ryan Wedding getting off the plane in cuffs onto the tarmac. So that was something. And then after this news conference, Patel got on another plane and went to another location that I can't discuss yet because it's still under embargo, but he's going to make another announcement later today. We do know about another fugitive that was taken into custody while in Mexico. That was something he mentioned briefly while he was in Ontario, but we don't have the details on who that suspect is, but we're waiting for that.
Oh, we'll be waiting too now that we know just a bit of what is to come. Yeah. Now, have we heard anything from like any family members of Ryan Wedding or neighbors or anyone who could kind of say what they thought or what they missed about him?
We're still waiting to see. He was in Mexico, authorities believe, for at least a decade. So there are a lot of question marks out there over who was even connected to him at this point from his earlier years when he was in the public regarding his athletic career. So we really don't know at this point. He's been on the run for so long.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, much more to come on the Ryan Wedding case, and we'll be looking to hear more from Kash Patel as the day goes on as well. Thank you so much for your time, Alicia. We appreciate it.
You bet. Good to talk to you, Anita. Take care.
Same. Have a good weekend. Just about 3:24, everyone. Let's take a quick 2-minute break, and we'll be right back. All right, welcome back, everyone. It's about 3:32 right now, and I told you that our big story of the day is really not only what's happening here in the city of Chicago and Chicagoland as an area in terms of the weather outside, but really the major storm systems that are affecting so many other parts of the country right now as well. And that's why we put in a call to Mike Seidel with Fox Weather to tell us a little bit about what's happening in Tulsa and the ice storm that they're expecting there. Mike, thank you so much for making time for us.
Yeah, thank you. When I was in Chicago today, I don't know if they've even gotten above zero. Have you gotten above zero yet officially at O'Hare? Last time I checked, it was 6 below zero, and the wind chill was like 20 below zero. Has it warmed up to zero yet there, Anita?
Mike, we're having some audio issues here, so we're going to try to work through these. Let's see here. We're sitting at about 1 degree here in the city of Chicago right now, and the wind chill is -10 at the moment, but of course at one point in time we were experiencing negatives in the double digits.
Well, here in Tulsa, we are at 24 degrees, Anita, and our wind chill's down around 10.
Tell us a little bit about what you all are
So they can't
experiencing
hear
there.
me.
You're all bundled up.
Yes, it's 24 right now. The wind chill's 10, much colder than yesterday, down over 30 degrees. And temperatures tonight will fall through the teens into the single numbers. Tomorrow, our high will be about 7 or 8 degrees, which is about 40 degrees colder than average in Tulsa. Remember, you know, we're a lot farther south than Chicago, and the average high here tomorrow is 50 degrees, which would feel awfully nice, but nowhere near there. In fact, I don't see 50 degrees here for another week at least. It's going to be very cold after the storm. And this could be their biggest snowstorm on record. Snowfall totals at least 8 to 12 inches. Maybe we break the all-time record, Anita, of 14.0 inches here in Tulsa. That would be quite impressive. It's going to be a very dry, powdery snow, Anita, because temperatures are going to be so cold. And then with the wind tomorrow, gusting 20 to 25 miles an hour, we're going to have the blowing and drifting snow.
And I worked in Oklahoma for about 5 years, and we covered 2 blizzards. I mentioned that a little earlier in the show. We covered 2 blizzards during my time there, but it is rare for Oklahoma to really get hit like this.
It is this kind of a total snowfall. The average snowfall in Tulsa is just under 9 inches, and a little bit less than that in Oklahoma City. So you get a feeling that they're going to get a whole season's worth of snowfall in one day with one storm. So this is impressive, and the cold weather's impressive. That cold air in Chicago is heading our way. Just a couple hours up the road in Wichita, they've started snowing, and their temperature's down to 9 with the wind chill running at about 8 or 9 below zero. So tomorrow, about as cold as it ever gets here. They've had colder days, a few since the 1800s. Their coldest high temperature is 2. Now, tomorrow's high temperature will actually be set at midnight, Anita, so we may not break the record of 15, but during the day tomorrow, boy, as cold as you'll see it in your lifetime when you have highs in the single numbers at this latitude. You know, this is Oklahoma. This is not, you know, the Dakotas. In fact, the average high in International Falls today, it's not nearly that warm, is 16. So we're going to be colder than the average high up there on the Canadian-U.S. border tomorrow here in Tulsa. By the way, the snow starts this evening, probably about 8 or 9 or shortly thereafter, and it snows into Sunday morning. The winter storm warning and the excessive cold, all that continues. Those warnings continue until Sunday afternoon, Sunday evening, and then next week, as I mentioned, the sun will come back out, but temperatures most days, certainly Monday, will not get to freezing, and then beyond that, maybe a few days, it gets above freezing for a few hours. So all this territory, you can see, we've got some hills here. That's the skyline in the distance. That's downtown Tulsa. And what we're seeing right now is the skies have gotten cloudy, and the sky is getting a little fuzzier, meaning it's trying to precip, and it's going to have to get down to the surface. This is a very dry and cold air mass, so it's going to take a while. It'll be snowing off for a few hours before it gets down to the ground, and then all systems are go for what is going to be a very impactful storm. But fortunately, no chance of any ice here. The ice is going to be confined to North Texas, southern Oklahoma. Some places that will get a lot of ice, southern Arkansas. There are ice storm warnings around the Memphis area, Ole Miss, Oxford, Mississippi. Catastrophic ice storm is possible. Some of these areas may get an inch of ice. That's going to knock out power to hundreds of thousands, not only there, but across northern Alabama, the western Carolinas, from Atlanta up 85, Charlotte's in there, Greenville, and then Raleigh-Durham, and then into parts of Virginia. You're going to have a lot of freezing rain. And then in between, snow, then sleet and freezing rain. Like in D.C., they'll probably have some snow, then sleet, and so that will cut down on your accumulations. But if you got any travel out of Chicago back east tomorrow and Sunday, especially Sunday, check ahead. Air carriers have already canceled hundreds of flights over the weekend into those big northeastern hubs. So you may not be going anywhere, and you probably have already heard that your flight has been canceled because they're trying to get the planes out of the harm's way. Even though it's not going to snow in New York City until Sunday morning, they've already canceled flights in and out of those three major airports.
We had a reporter who was at the airport this morning. You know, obviously you're looking at the ripple effects. Even if you're waiting on aircraft to come from one of these other areas, you could get canceled because of that, even if it's not a cancellation because of what exactly is happening here in the state of Illinois. As you've been there in Tulsa, I'm not sure how many hours you've been there, but in the hours of preparation for what is to come, what is the sentiment of people in that area? How is it feeling? How is it looking in the area?
A lot of people are just going to stay home all weekend. That's the way to go, because the roads aren't going to be great, even though they do have snow plows installed here. And, you know, it is a weekend, so schools aren't impacted. But I suspect that today they sent the kids home with laptops or whatever they need to do for digital learning in this area, because I can't imagine schools being open at least Monday, if not beyond next week, because of the lack of melting in this area. They have prepped the bridges and overpasses and the icy spots they normally see with a brine solution. They've got plows and salt ready for the snow when it starts to fall here in a few hours. I've been actually here since Wednesday. Yesterday, as I mentioned, beautiful day, 57 and mostly sunny. And today, 30 degrees plus colder, and we continue to go downhill. By the way, if you're traveling out of Chicago on the highways, anything east and south is going to be dicey. Chicago's just far enough north out of the swath of snow, but if you're heading downstate to Peoria, over to Indianapolis, Cincinnati, a lot of those areas are going to get 6 to 12 inches of snow. So if you have a trip planned out of Chicagoland, anywhere downstate and off to the east, you're going to have problems on 80, 90, and then down towards I-70. That is going to be another thoroughfare greatly impacted by the snow later tonight into Saturday and Saturday night.
Weather, we certainly appreciate you taking a little time from Tulsa to tell us about what's happening there, but also how we can even stay safe here in the state of Illinois. Thank you so much for your time. You be safe while you're out there reporting as well.
Yeah, and I hope spring gets here sooner rather than later. Trust me.
We can't wait for spring. And that is why summertime shy is a real thing. We all spill out into the streets because we've been through so much during the winter. Take
Indeed.
care. All right. It's 3:40 right now. And, you know, when we talk about these extreme cold conditions, as I've mentioned earlier, there's just so many different angles to what we see, what we feel, what we experience. And one of the main conversations over the last week or so from many of our viewers that are in the state of Indiana has been on their NICOR bills. And I mean, they have skyrocketed in a stunning fashion. And so our own Brett Bugansky has been on that story for the last several days. Brett, we know you're getting ready for the 4 o'clock show right now, but we wanted to just kind of give our viewers here on Chicago Live a bit of an update on where you stand with your reporting about the NICOR bills, and also, you know, just give us more examples of what exactly people are seeing and dealing with there.
Well, if there's any positive to come out of this is that everybody is very aware of what is going on. They're very in tune with what's happening with the Indiana Utility Regulatory Commission, as well as what's going on in Indianapolis right now, because there's going to be some bills taken up, one specifically on Monday that comes with better regulating utility companies, making it more affordable, potentially capping those areas, having more transparency in the process when it comes to if they set any more increases to your utility bills. But also they want to be able to just have some transparency and just some questions about why some of these bills have gone high. So it's a good thing why we have social media, because you have a lot of people together saying, what does your bill say? Well, my bill says this, and this is what this says. And just giving a few examples of just how big this is. I was speaking with Terry Logan earlier today. She lives in Hamlet, Indiana, and she's retired. She lived with her husband. And just to show you the drastic change in her bills, going from December of 24 to this past December, she went from paying about $107 to paying almost $275.
Wow.
The usage has not changed. One of the big things that they're paying more for is something called a delivery fee or delivery charge. And that's where they take a lot of the natural gas, they move it across the state. But when we had contacted NIPSCO about what goes into setting that rate for moving the natural gas around the state, they said there's transportation costs during that whole thing. But these two things really stuck out, and this is something that has stuck out with a lot of our viewers in Northwest Indiana. There was, in that statement from NIPSCO, it said part of that cost goes to maintaining and upgrading infrastructure. This has gotten the attention of a lot of our state lawmakers, including State Representative Mike Andrade, who I just spoke to within the last 2 hours. So he's going to put some amendments into this one bill called House Bill 1002, which looks at capping costs, making it more affordable for Northwest Indiana customers, as well as the entire state of Indiana. Because one of the other things that they were talking about is that anybody who lives in Northwest Indiana, so they are utility customers for Northern Indiana Public Service Company. They describe it as a monopoly. It's not like anybody can go and shop around and go with a different utility company. This is the only game in town. So when they get their bill, this is their bill, their electric bill, their gas bill, and they're paying significantly higher than a lot of people across the state of Indiana. And this is a company that has already charged the most amount of money when it comes to electricity. And they feel like when it comes to their gas bill, it just doesn't add up when it comes to the rest of the state.
Yeah, and I want to apologize. I said NICOR. NIPSCO is what we are talking about here. That's the Northern Indiana Public Service Company. When I say that people have been reaching out by the dozens, if not hundreds, really, give us an idea of how many emails you've gotten over just the last couple of days.
We had this great conversation in the newsroom just a few hours ago. And I want to say I apologize to all of our viewers out there. Just to show you how big of an issue this is, I probably have about 55 to 60 messages just on my Facebook Messenger alone from people that I haven't responded to. And I promise I'm going to get back to you. But this is just the ones of how big of an issue this is, because after all, this isn't a partisan issue. This is something where we all pay our utility bills. We all have to feed our families. We pay for groceries, pay for utilities. So this is impacting all of us, even our state lawmakers, the ones that many say probably make a lot of money. This is impacting them too. So this is a pocketbook issue, which we certainly know that this affects all of our viewers, and we're working to get some answers from you about why these costs are so high and the explanation for it. And one of the other explanations of why they were so high is that the natural gas rates are set by the market. But this is already at a time when natural gas rates are seeing a 25% increase. Just going with the fact that they're transporting natural gas throughout the state, as well as paying for upgrading and maintaining the infrastructure, that certainly is not sitting well with a lot of people. They feel like they shouldn't have to pay that the utility company should have to pay that. And another big update here when I was just doing some digging in this thing, and thank you to all of our viewers kind of giving us different tips, and because of you guys, we're able to investigate this a little bit further in case people weren't aware of NIPSCO. When I was looking at the Regulatory Commission, I was looking at NIPSCO. There are some pending cases right now, and one of them is from the commission himself, looking into billing discrepancies, how it impacts the company's revenues and rates, and if customers should be getting refunds. So that was filed this past fall, and it's pending right now. We'll hopefully get an update soon about where that stands right now. But certainly, this is something that has the Regulatory Board, the Commission's attention. It has state lawmakers' attention. And now this is the time where everybody has to be tuned into the news to find out that, look, you've got to pay attention to these things. These are pocketbook issues that affect everyone. And if you don't say anything, nothing is going to change. But certainly because all of our viewers spoke up and brought it to our attention and brought it to state lawmakers' attention, brought to the Regulatory Commission, this certainly has the potential to bring some change to the state of Indiana.
And when I hear, commission and lawmakers and things of that nature, obviously it's great that it has their attention, but then I wonder how much red tape before an actual change happens when people's bills are still coming in right now.
Oh, absolutely. And there's things that they could change right now through the IRUC. Now, what we heard from Representative Andrade as he was kind of educating me on the whole issue is that there have been 2 reported rate hikes within the last year. So the commission had approved this before. Everybody started to see drastic changes starting in the fall. And now people are having to pay for this thing. And now we're getting into the worst part of winter, not only in Chicago, but Northwest Indiana. They're feeling a lot of lake effect snow today. We're aware of that right now. But if there was any kind of political will, because constituents vote and elections have consequences, and what is made up of that regulatory commission is appointees from Indiana Governor Mike Braun. In the amendment that Representative Andrade is going to is he wants to make that not a political appointee position, but he wants it to have commissioners voted by their constituents for people who actually represent them. Because if they don't like something that's going on, much like our lawmakers, they work for us. If we don't like what they're doing, you vote them out of office. With this commission right now, can't vote them out of office. This is something that these are Governor Braun's appointees.
Yeah. Okay. So day 1 of your reporting, you're listening to the people. You're finding out, what are some of their issues. Day 2 of reporting this, you're back now speaking with some of the lawmakers, obviously working to get more information from the company itself, NIPSCO. Where do you go with your reporting from here? And as you get ready for the afternoon newscast, but then also moving forward, where do you go with your reporting?
Well, 2 things in the very near future. Number one, they're going to be in session on Monday in Indianapolis, and we're going to be looking at House Bill 1002. So if anybody's watching right now, they can look at it from their computer, through the Indiana legislature, look up House Bill 1002. You could read the legislation. It's always good to read because you can see what's in the bill, who sponsors them, how this impacts you. There's going to be amendments on the floor. You're going to be able to watch that online as well. I don't know off the top of my head when they're going to be on the House floor, but this is going to be in the second reading where we look at this bill and we find out if lawmakers have an appetite for this. Now, Representative Andrade is a Democrat. Republicans hold a supermajority in the legislature in Indiana. From what he told me is that he thinks at least that they're going to accept some of those amendments. He doesn't know if it's going to be significant enough where it's going to bring real immediate change to everyone's wallet books. But one of the other things that he talked about was maybe getting rid of the sales tax from the thing. So if you look at your bill, they tell you exactly what the usage is, what the fees are, and what the taxes are. One of the things that he thinks is going to go through is getting rid of the sales tax because they already don't pay sales tax on groceries. He thinks maybe this could be a start. Now, is that the answer that people are looking for? Probably not, but at least it's a start. The other thing that's going to be important is that there's going to be 2 planned protests happening, one on Sunday, February 1st, and the other one happening on February 4th. The first one is on a Sunday outside the NIPSCO office in Hammond, Indiana. The second one in Maryville, Indiana. This is a protest for people making their voices heard about why they are just very upset with what's going on with the bill of rights.
Absolutely. Raising their voices as their bills are being raised as well. So we'll see where things go from here with this. And please continue the reporting so we can find out if there's a resolution, if when they are raising their voices, if they actually have an impact on how things moving forward, because even if this is the first time they've seen bills this high, without any change, it seems like this could be an occurrence that happens yet again down the road.
This is the stuff that inspires people to potentially make changes, whether it's running for office. Some people go to the state level, national level. Sometimes it just starts in your city council, school board. But these are the issues that affect all of us. It doesn't matter where you stand politically on this. We all pay our bills. This is something where this is the only game in town if you live in Northwest Indiana. We've got even some coworkers who were in Northwest Indiana asking me, hey, why is this so high? Okay, so it just shows you this is something that affects everyone. Okay, we all pay for something. And the people who can make some change are some lawmakers. We'll see if there's a political will to do that. And if people are not happy with how it turns out, then they got to make some tough decisions ahead.
Yeah, we'll see where things happen from here. Thank you so much for your time. We know you got to get ready for the 4 o'clock show. It's right around the corner.
I appreciate it. Anytime you want me, I'm here.
All right, take care. All right, everyone. It's about 3:52 right now. Give us a 2-minute break. We'll be back with a little bit more before we get out of here. All right, 3:55 right now as we take you live to Minneapolis here. There's a planned day of action and reflection in Minnesota today to protest ICE's surge of action in this area over the last few weeks. They have clergy, activists, and other people calling for people not to go to work, school, not to shop, but they are rallying and protesting and marching in the streets there of Minneapolis today. It's a part of many other areas that are also protesting today and into the weekend. We'll be right back. All right, everyone, 3:58 right now, and what we showed you there in Minneapolis is just a piece of what's been happening today. There were also ICE protests in New York City, LA, Oakland, Phoenix, and Seattle. So those are some of the big stories they'll be talking about coming up first at 4, which is coming up next. Obviously, here at home, the biggest story at the moment is the weather outside. Make sure you have a safe weekend, stay indoors as much as possible, and we hope to see you right back here on Monday for more Chicago Live from 1 to 4 p.m.
From Chicago, this is Fox 32 News at 4.
Now at 4, this live look hides what is coming. We'll show you when temperatures and conditions turn most dangerous and how